Yasodhanandana Prajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari. Oh, Primalady, please excuse my very croaky voice. Nasta Prayeshu Vajreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavate Tamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. A regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service is the personality of Godhead, who is praised for transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narotanam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato dayamudidayet. Before reciting this Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, and to Nara Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatinarandasya Gyanandana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Dena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. It's only like to put Prabhupada's glasses and book on, please. So, welcome everyone to our daily Bhagavatam reading and discussion. Today we're discussing chapter 25 of the third canto, verse 37. I always dread it when someone will go, no, that's the wrong verse. So we are on 37. Ato vibhutim mama maya vinashtam Ashvaryam astangam Ashvaryam astangam anupravritam Shriyam Bhagavatim Vasprihayante Badram Parasye Mete Smuvate Tuloke Ato Vibhutim Mama Maya Vinastam Aishvaryam Astangam Anupavrakritam Shriyam Bhagavatim Vasprihayanti Badram Parasya Mete Smuvate Tuloke. Mete Smuvate Tuloke Ato Vibhutim Mama Maya Vinastam Shriyam Bhagavatim Vasprihayanti Badram Parasya Mete Smuvate Tuloke Ato Vibhutim Mama Maya Vinastam Ashvaryam Astangam Anupavritam Shriyam Bhagavatim Vasprihayanti Badram Parasya Mete Smuvate Tuloke To Vibhutim Mama Maya Vinastam Aishvaryam Astangam Anupavritam Shriyam Bhagavatim Vaspriyayanti Bhadram Parasya Mete Snuvate Tuloke Ato Vibhutim Mama Maya Vinastam Ashvaryam Astangam Anupavritam Shriyam Bhagavatim Vaspriyayanti Bhadram Arasya Mete Snuvate Tuloke. Thank you. Please repeat after me. Ato, then, Vibhutim, opulence, Mama, of me, Maya Vina, of the Lord of Maya, Tam, that, Aishvaryam, mystic perfection, Asta Angam, consisting of 8 parts, Anupavritam, following, Shriyam, splendor, Bhagavatim, of the kingdom of God, Va, or, Asprihayanti, they do not desire, Bhadram, blissful, Parasya, of the Supreme Lord, Me, of me, Te, those devotees, Ashnuvate, enjoy, Tu, but, Loke, in this life. Translation. Thus, because he is completely absorbed in thought of me, the devotee does not desire even the highest benediction obtainable in the upper planetary systems, including Satyaloka. He does not desire the 8 material perfections obtained from mystic yoga, nor does he desire to be elevated to the kingdom of God. Yet even without desiring them, the devotee enjoys even in this life, all the offered benedictions. Please repeat after me. Thus, because he is completely absorbed in thought of me, the devotee does not desire even the highest benediction obtainable in the upper planetary systems, including Satyaloka. He does not desire the 8 material perfections obtained from mystic yoga, nor does he desire to be elevated to the kingdom of God. Yet even without desiring them, the devotee enjoys, even in this life, all the offered benedictions. I'll just read the purport. The vibhuti, or opulences, offered by Maya are of many varieties. We have experience of different varieties of material enjoyment, even on this planet. But if one is able to promote himself to higher planets like Chandraloka, the sun, or, still higher, Mahaloka, Janaloka, and Tapoloka, or even ultimately the highest planet, which is inhabited by Brahma and is called Satyaloka. There are immense possibilities for material enjoyment. For example, the duration of life on higher planets is far, far greater than on this planet. It is said that on the moon, the duration of life is such that our 6 months are equal to 1 day. We cannot even imagine the duration of life on the highest planet. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that Brahma's 12 hours are inconceivable even to our mathematicians. These are all descriptions of the external energy of the Lord, or Maya. Besides these, there are other opulences which the yogis can achieve by the mystic power. They are also material. A devotee does not aspire for all these material pleasures, although they are available to him simply by wishing. By the grace of the Lord, a devotee can achieve wonderful success simply by willing, but a real devotee does not like that. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught that one should not desire material opulence or material reputation, nor should one try to enjoy material beauty. One should simply aspire to be absorbed in the devotional service of the Lord, even if one does not get liberation, but has to continue the process of birth and death unlimitedly. Actually, however, to one who engages in Krishna consciousness, liberation is already guaranteed. Devotees enjoy all the benefits of the higher planets and the Vaikuntha planets also. It is especially mentioned here, Bhagavatim Bhadram. In the Vaikuntha planets, everything is eternally peaceful. Yet a pure devotee does not even aspire to be promoted there. But still he gets that advantage. He enjoys all the facilities of the material and spiritual worlds, even during the present lifespan. Very deep verse, that one, and preceding verses have all been about the wonderful glorification of the pure devotee. So coming so close to Srila Prabhupada's Tirabhavatiti, his disappearance day, we've been very much focused on, as we hopefully will always be, on Srila Prabhupada. So these verses, I was going back a little bit and reading them again, and the very, very potent glorification of the Lord. So this chapter is entitled The Glories of Devotional Service. So Kapila Dev in the past 4 or so verses has been glorifying the pure devotee. And when I read devotee, I think that's referring to the pure devotee, not our aspirational devotional service. So the Lord explains some key points in this translation. So he says, 1, the pure devotee, the devotee is completely absorbed in him. He doesn't think of anything else. And we know from Srila Prabhupada's life, Prabhupada never had any private time. Even, of course, he would rest for a short amount of time each day, but it wasn't a kind of, we can't disturb Srila Prabhupada. His servant was there ready to access him whenever Prabhupada needed anything. He was there. And when you listen to the wonderful pastimes of his servants like Shrutakirti Prabhu, it's very, very wonderful. And Srila Prabhupada, we knew that no matter where he was, what he was doing, he was always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. And Prabhupada explained to us that I have no memory of not always remembering Krishna. So even as a little child, he was always focused on Krishna. So Kapila Dev says that pure devotee is completely absorbed in the Lord. And because the pure devotee, the second point, does not desire even the highest benediction, and because of this, even the highest benediction obtainable is not something that he's interested in. And then the third point, he doesn't even desire the 8 mystic perfections. Be pretty good, wouldn't it? You could extend your hand to the Himalayas and get some precious herb, or you can, be somewhere in an instant. You could float up in the sky light as a feather. All of these amazing mystic cities or opulences, the pure devotee is not interested in. And then the fourth point was the pure devotee, he doesn't even desire to be elevated to Vaikuntha. He doesn't even wish to go there. Would someone mind closing that door for me? I've got this chest thing and cold air on me is a bit hard. So yet, despite of not desiring any of the above benediction, he still enjoys them in this life, which is kind of, it's an amazing thing. And of course we know Krishna didn't make it very easy for Srila Prabhupada, and that was for a particular reason, my understanding, so that the pure devotee can get the credit. If Krishna made it very easy, some very opulent sponsors who took care of Prabhupada's financial needs, who provided beautiful accommodation, who took care of all the marketing. No, Srila Prabhupada did everything with the grace of Krishna and his faith and devotion in his spiritual master. So in text 33, in the purport, going back a few verses, Prabhupada explains that the very service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the process of his liberation, because to engage oneself in the service of the Lord is to liberate oneself from material entanglement.
So the same thing that we're doing here, we'll be doing in the spiritual world, in perhaps a different rendition, but it's the service. So when we're gathered here as devotees, worshipping the Lord, worshipping Srila Prabhupada, I would expect all of you would feel that sense of camaraderie, that sense of empowerment that we're doing this together in service, and appreciation for all the devotees around us, because they are dear to Krishna, they're worshipping him, they're serving him. And because they're dear to Krishna, then they're dear to me also. And in that purport in 33, Prabhupada continues to say that Vibhamangala to Thakur says, if I have unflinching devotion unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, then mukti or liberation serves me as my maidservant. Mukti, the maidservant, is always ready to do whatever I ask. So you would probably all be familiar with Vibhamangala Thakur. Is anyone here not familiar with him? So he was, as we know, he struggled. He was in the 10th century, and he wrote Krishna Karanamrita, and he is exemplary in his devotion to Krishna. But he didn't start off that way. He became obsessed with a courtesan, and he did all kinds of crazy things to try and reach her. And in the end, and when he arrived, she said, if only you had this much devotion to Krishna. So he actually plucked out his own eyes so he wouldn't see the feminine form. He was a little extreme in that. But he did become an ecstatic devotee. So don't try this at home, not recommended. So this verse and previous verses in this chapter are wonderful glorifications of the pure devotee, as I mentioned. So last weekend we celebrated Srila Prabhupada, and it's particularly apt for us that the pure devotee is being glorified by the Lord himself. The Kapila Dev is Krishna, and he is an incarnation of Krishna, and he's glorifying the pure devotee. So we also need to keep uppermost in our minds that the pure devotee status is not a cheap thing. I've mentioned this before, but when I first became a devotee or an aspiring devotee, I used to think, oh yeah, maybe a year, maybe 2 max, I'll be a pure devotee. I don't know, do you ever think like that, Ambika? 6 months, yeah. So we kind of thought that, we'll follow the process, and then we'll be free of all of our anartas and vibhutis, and we'll be pure devotees. But it's in time, and 50 plus years later, those of us who are still plugging along, we know that that's not an easy thing. But it doesn't mean that you get uninspired and think, I'm never going to be able to achieve this. Because Prabhupada said, in 1 second you can become Krishna conscious. But we shouldn't expect that automatically that's going to happen. We just try and endeavour. So the very lofty, elevated position, that of the pure devotees. But Prabhupada did encourage us. But he also said that devotional life is on a razor's edge. Any minute we can slip. So we have to be very vigilant. And Prabhupada himself said, I pray to Krishna that I will not be affected by Maya, in his complete humility. So that can be a prayer that we can say at least once a day, or as many times as we can remember. Please, my dear Lord, don't let me forget how dangerous Maya is. And it starts little, creeps in little bit, and before you know it, it's a habit. Before you know it, your consciousness is not steady, it's not tranquil, and then, we can fall down. But it usually doesn't start in kind of like a really major, impactful way. It's insidious. Maya can be very insidious. That's her duty to Krishna, that she's been given this duty to keep those conditioned souls in the material world. And we have to try very hard and say to Maya, no, we're serving Krishna now. We're not listening to you. So she will try her very best. That's her service. But by Prabhupada's mercy, we can stick to it, and by this constant prayer. And sometimes our behaviour and way of treating our fellow devotees can fall short. Now, if Krishna himself says, Mad Bhakta Pujayat Adiyat Adikat, that praise of my pure devotee, service of my pure devotee is more pleasing to me than service to me. And even though we may not be on the pure devotee category, we're aspiring, we're struggling, we still offer each other love and respect. And it's so important that each of us do that and, forget about the Facebook, critique of devotees, of ISKCON. Forget about all that nonsense and just focus on such a rare birth, this human birth. And so rare are those humans who are devoted to Krishna consciousness. So all devotees should be honoured and respected and treated as part of our family. And Prabhupada likens the offence against devotees, in particular the pure devotee, but it's called the mad elephant offence. So you can imagine a great wild elephant getting into our East Gardens or wherever all the plantings are now, and they would wreak havoc. So when we commit offences or aparadhs against devotees, that's like the wild elephant offence, and your devotional garden, your bhakti, will be completely obliterated. So it's very important. And in a lecture Prabhupada gave on December the 6th in 1974 in Bombay, he explained that just as we might carefully and diligently hold a very precious jewel in our hands, that is the way Krishna holds his pure devotees. Like the precious jewels they are decorated with the gold of pure devotion. So Krishna is holding his pure devotees very gently, very lovingly in his beautiful lotus hands. And then what does that pure devotee do? That pure devotee is giving shelter to all of us. So if we can cling on to the pure devotee is sheltered in the hands of Krishna, then we have a very good opportunity. And then Prabhupada said that in all of the scriptures, it's stated that the pure devotee does not want anything. What to speak of liberation or even the 8 mystic powers. He just wants to serve. That's his modus operandi. How can I serve Krishna? How can I serve my spiritual master? And in the 11th canto in chapter 15, I found this interesting summary. Being questioned by Uddhava, Lord Sri Krishna describes the characteristics of the 18 mystic perfections and the particular kind of meditation by which each is achieved. In conclusion, Krishna states that for one who desires to perform pure devotional service to the personality of Godhead, the achievement of these mystic perfections is a waste of time because they distract one from proper worship. I found that very, very interesting. There's, hundreds and thousands of yogis who are maybe up in the Himalayas, still some of them, and they can control their breathing. Prabhupada said at one of the first Kumbh Melas that devotees went to, Prabhupada said, see that sadhu? He's 400 years old. And he lives in the Himalayas and he controls his breath by pranayama. But the pure devotee is not interested in any of that, those mystic cities. That's not his goal. And then Kapila Dev describes, in the 11th canto, the 8 primary mystic perfections. I mentioned them as Anima, becoming smaller than the smallest, Mahima, becoming greater than the greatest, Laghima, lighter than the lightest, float away like a feather. Then there's Prapti, which you acquire whatever you desire, the power to obtain or reach anything, anywhere, instantly, including distant or hidden objects. Prakamya Siddhi, can experience any enjoyable object in this world or the next, can enter fire or water. Number 6, with Isita Siddhi, one can manipulate the sub-potencies of Maya, It's the power of lordship. And Vasista Siddhi, the power to subdue or control all material entities, including other living beings. One is unimpeded by the three modes of nature. And then finally, Kama Vasayita Siddhi, the perfection of being able to attain anything at will, commanding nature perfectly, a complete mastery of one's desires and the external world. Yet all of those incredible mystic potencies, they are irrelevant to the pure devotee. And they're automatically there. They're just waiting. Bid me, I'm your servant. What do you want me to do? And Bivalmangala Thakur's repeating it here. If I have unflinching devotion unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, then mukti or liberation serves me as my maidservant. Mukti, the maidservant, is already ready to do whatever I ask. And then in the Shishashtaka we reach that verse that I know one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. So the pure devotee reflects this mood of Lord Chaitanya. He was playing the role of a devotee of the Lord, although he is the Lord himself in the mood of Radharani. And when Krishna says in 1866, for our Bhakti Sastri students, Sarvadhamam Prichacha Mamakam Saranam Vraja Ham Tvam Sapapepyo Mokshay Shamima Sujaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So Krishna is stating here that for the fully surrendered, there's no fear. Krishna is there. He's holding the pure devotees in his hands. And when Krishna says he will take care, what is the need of fear? There's a very popular saying in India, Raki Krishna Mari Ke, Raki Krishna, Mari Krishna Raki Ke. If Krishna wants to kill you, no one can kill you. If Krishna wants to protect you, no one can kill you. If Krishna wants to kill you, no one can protect you. Raki Ke. So the proprietor of the six opulences says, just surrender to me and I will take care of you. And we know the six opulences, or wealth, or beauty, or fame, knowledge and renunciation, strength. And before the start of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Duryodhana had a choice. He could either choose Krishna or all of Krishna's multitude of formidable armies. But because Duryodhana was not a pure devotee, he was thinking, one man Krishna, he didn't see that Krishna was the Supreme Lord. Let me take all of Krishna's armies. But Arjuna, he was a dear friend of the Lord and a devotee. He knew that Krishna is also called Ajita, one who cannot be conquered. So of course he chose to have Krishna, even though Krishna said, but I'm not going to fight. Still, I'll drive your chariot. Still, Arjuna was very much pleased that Krishna agreed. So in the Mahabharata, the history of the whole Bharat, Varsha, not just India, describes how Krishna was never conquered. And if we speculate, we'll never know God. Some of us may have, before we came to Krishna consciousness, we might have been very expert speculators, or not even expert speculators, but speculators. I was such a nonsense speculator. I had, God is some kind of energy, it's some light, but I don't know who he looks like. He's not God the Father, the old man that, Catholic Church teachings would lead us to believe. So it's by this idea of speculation is actually a very fraught path, because you can't reach a solution. We follow Guru Sadhu Sastra. And in this Bombay lecture that I referred to, Prabhupada explains that we need to try and understand God from God himself and his pure devotee. Prabhupada says that if we become very humble and submissive, and if we pray very sincerely to Krishna, that if you think I can understand you, if you think I'm fit, please kindly explain yourself to me. and I was listening to, or rather reading, this very nice memory by a god brother of mine called Hari Vilas. And he's talking about this humility and how Prabhupada was expressing descriptions about humility. So they were walking along, it was a morning walk around the, I can't pronounce it, but Bois de Boulogne, in which there are some lakes. And I remember asking Prabhupada a question. I asked several questions, but one specific question was, Srila Prabhupada, what does it mean to be humble? His answer was really incredible. He said, humility means that you are convinced beyond any doubt that there is nothing in this world, absolutely nothing in this world, not your money, not your family, not your fame, not your gun, not your education, nothing that will save you except the mercy of Krishna. When you are convinced like this, then you are humble. I thought that was such a wonderful description. Humility means that you are convinced beyond any doubt that there is nothing in this world, absolutely nothing, that will save you except Krishna's mercy. And he goes on to say, and that explanation really impressed me. In other words, he was saying, when you depend completely on Krishna and no longer rely on any material thing or formula as a backup, you have no longer any backup, just the mercy of Krishna. Then you will actually be humble. So that was a wonderful explanation that he gave, and that stayed with me all these years, because that is actually the foundation of humility in Krishna consciousness. And obviously Srila Prabhupada was an example of that. So, understanding Krishna is an impossible task. We can't really, with our teeny little senses, we can't really perceive. But we can understand that he is the supreme controller, the personality of Godhead, by the grace of Prabhupada and studying Prabhupada's books, listening to his conversations, listening to his lectures, as a daily practice. When you do something daily, it takes, I believe, about 3 weeks to develop a bad habit. So logically, then it should take 3 weeks to establish a good habit. So if every day you start that habit, for those of us who may not be doing it, you start that habit of every day, okay, I'll go in small and I'll come out big. So let me read one verse, one purport a day, and then build it up. And you could do it in 15-minute increments. 15 minutes morning, 15 minutes lunch, 15 minutes evening. You can build it up. So that daily diving into the nectar of Prabhupada's books is so important in developing our understanding, because we can do all the service that we like. We can serve, wonderful, doing that bhakti. But if we're not reading, we're not understanding why we're doing the service. And after a while we can get burnt out, we can get exhausted and think, oh no, I need a break. But if we have that right understanding, of course, the body sometimes, goes, yeah, I really require a break, that's fine. But if you have that notion that I'm just not a workhorse, but I'm doing this for a specific purpose because I want to serve Prabhupada in his mission and I want to serve the deities, I want to serve the Lord, then by reading his books, that gives you a really good, rounded understanding. And Prabhupada's saying that just with one part of Krishna's opulence, he is maintaining all the material, innumerable universes. And the Brahma Samhita describes, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desires in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with reverence, great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. So in this lecture that Prabhupada spoke on this verse, he was talking about the Brahma Samhita, which that verse is from, as you know. And Lord Chaitanya was travelling in South India, and he discovered a copy on palm leaf, or some kind of leaf, of the Brahma Samhita, these 8 verses. So he copied that, because there was no printing press, obviously. So the brahmanas would have these rare manuscripts and they would copy them by hand. So Lord Chaitanya copied that Brahma Samhita, and then he took it with him, and I presume more copies were made. And then Prabhupada also made a really wonderful point. So in that Bombay lecture, Prabhupada was saying that the Bhagavatam, or the books, are worshipable. And Prabhupada said, just as we take care of the deities, Prabhupada said, we similarly must take care of the sastra, or the grantha, is the book incarnation of Krishna. So even if you don't have deities of your own, especially when you live near a temple, Prabhupada encourages us to always come to worship the deity in the temple. But if you don't have, home deities, you have the Bhagavatam, or you have the Bhagavad Gita. And then every day you can offer incense and a flower, your obeisances to the Bhagavatam. It's just the same as you'll be offering to Krishna. And in this purport to this verse, Prabhupada explains how we can experience different varieties of enjoyment. But in the heavenly planets, there are immense possibilities for material enjoyment. We think we're enjoying here, right? We enjoy a little bit, eat some nice pizza, or, see a nice sunrise or a sunset. But in the heavenly planets, the level of enjoyment is beyond our understanding. And even the demigods, even though they have so much opulence, so much enjoyment, they live for, such a long time, that they all pray, please let me take birth on earth, because there I can develop truly my Krishna consciousness. So we're in a really fortunate position, even though Tiki Tiki confirms it, even though we're struggling with this material body and we get sick and this happens and that happens, and it goes on and on, because that's the cycle of material life. But we are so fortunate because Prabhupada's given us knowledge, he's given us the holy name. We're very blessed, and we should thank Prabhupada and Krishna every day for that. It's great good fortune, having all the opulences in the world, or the fancy cars, or the big mansions. They're so irrelevant. The precious jewel is our bhakti, is our service, the opportunity to do service, opportunity to serve Prabhupada. And in the purport, Prabhupada refers to Brahma's vast duration of life. His lifetime is 311 trillion, 40 billion years. Correct me if I'm wrong. His one day is 1,000 yugas. Then multiplied by all the yugas multiplied by 1,000, right? I think that's correct. Yes, all the yugas, together. So, his day is very long and his night's very long, and his lifetime is very, very long. And the devotional position of the pure devotee that we're learning here, he doesn't even aspire for Vaikuntha, where there's no return. He doesn't even aspire for that. He simply wants to serve. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he prayed, if I take birth, let me be born as a worm in the house of a devotee. So that devotional association is very, very wonderful, but it's very delicate. And we need to be very, very conscious how we treat devotees, what we say about devotees, and have this kind of have a loving family mood. And that's what Prabhupada wanted. He said, ISKCON is your family. If a family member gets sick, what does the family do? They rally around the ailing devotee and help. So, we can look at that on a more practical, someone's sick, let's go and clean the house or whatever, like we have the devotee care. But also on that more subtle, higher level is how we deal with devotees, how we approach devotees, because they're very dear to Krishna. So in 3rd Canto 25-21, there's a verse that describes Prabhupada very nicely, and it's a well-known verse, Titikshava Karunika, Surida Savidehinam, ajata satrava shanta sadhava sadhubhushana. The symptoms of the sadhu are that he's tolerant, he's merciful and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies, he is peaceful, he abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. It's one of my favourite verses, and a beautiful description of Srila Prabhupada. Always tolerant, always merciful, always friendly to all living entities. Devotee, not devotee, human, not human. And he has no enemies, he's peaceful, he abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. So it's such a, for those of us who've been able to see Srila Prabhupada in his Vibhu form, every gesture of Prabhupada's was so sublime, so elegant but not contrived, very natural, but so just the way he'd pour water, the way he'd eat, everything, every movement, every action that he did was sublime. So, and there's a funny story in relationship with Srila Prabhupada being friendly to all living entities, seeing that even a dog can show devotional symptoms. So, in the early days of ISKCON in America, some devotees were going on Sankirtan with Prabhupada. As they were walking down the street, dogs started following them. And the devotees, like, we normally do, try and shoo the dog away, hut, 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 thinking the dog was a disturbance. But Prabhupada looked back and smiled and said, "Don't chase him away. He's also chanting Hare Krishna with us." Then Prabhupada chuckled and added, "He is more fortunate than many so-called gentlemen who refuse to chant." The devotees laughed, but they also saw how Prabhupada saw spiritual potential in every living being, even a dog. And we used to have this dog here, and B could probably remember it more. Used to come at Mangalati and Hari Rama and offer obeisances, right? Well, that's one devotee's just saying this dog also used to pay obeisances to sannyasis as well. And in 5th canto, chapter 18, verse 13, it says, "All demigods and their exalted qualities such as religion, knowledge and its renunciation become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead." And that's 5th canto, chapter 18, verse 13. It's worth reading that in more detail. And then, I've mentioned before how the Vandacharya has 5 special symptoms. He's the saviour of everyone. He removes the fear of all the fallen souls by his teachings. He gives purports to the scriptures, carrying the Vaishnava Siddhanta, such as Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. He also gives purports to the songs of the Vaishnavacharya. His name becomes identified with the philosophy of Lord Vishnu himself, and Srila Prabhupada's position as the founder Acharya of ISKCON exactly corresponds to this ancient definition of the founder Acharya. So, we can never imitate Prabhupada. Sometimes some of his disciples might try and sing like Prabhupada or sing Radhamadhava like Prabhupada or even imitate his accent or something, but that's actually not acceptable. You can't imitate the characteristics like that of the pure devotee. But we follow in the footsteps thereof. So Prabhupada's footsteps are very, very big. We can just, follow along in our tiny little footsteps, but if we stick very strongly to Prabhupada's instructions and the program that he's set up for us, then we can feel encouraged that Krishna's holding Prabhupada delicately, safely in his hands, and Prabhupada and your spiritual masters are holding you all safely in their hands. So thank you very much for listening so patiently. If you want to read more about Lord Brahma's lifespan, you can go to chapter 8, text 17 describes in detail about all the yugas and the timelines there. So, any questions, comments, feedback? Ambika.
You mentioned that Srila Prabhupada, you mentioned that the demigods are all they're lining up, that Prabhupada said they're lining up to take birth on here so that they can develop their Krishna consciousness. I'm just wondering if you have any insight into why Srila Prabhupada, he made the statement that 90% of my disciples will go to the heavenly planets. So that seems kind of a little bit like a curse in one way. I'm just wondering if you've got any insight into that.
Well, you know, I would say that, okay, they'll go to the heavenly planets, but they'll come back, and again take up this service. I don't have any sustric reference for supporting my statement then. But, yeah, and it's very hard to speculate on or think about, you know, what we're going to be doing. You know, Prabhupada said 99%. Well, that'd be great.
90%.
90%.
Yeah.
Well, then, you know, at least we'll be there developing our devotional attitude, our bhakti, and then we might come back and again hook up with Prabhupada's movement. I don't know. Do you have any insight that you'd like to add to that?
No, I always wondered about that.
Anyone else? Yes. We'll probably read something about that and go, yes, that's a good answer. Thank you. Food for thought there. All right, okay, thank you very much, everyone. Hari Bol, glories to Srila Prabhupada.